Welcome to Encounter Wargaming. I'm Jay, and today we're going to be building what I'm calling my Ork Nursery. So I decided I need to finish off our Ork table, and I mean it's pretty close to being a full table's worth of terrain, but it does require a couple of more pieces. Now, I am still trying to come up with an idea for more like full line of sight blocking buildings, but I definitely need to add some more personality to this table, and not that it doesn't have enough already, but you know what I'm saying. Basically, I'm going to build a little, what I call an Ork nursery, because you would say a nursery means like, you know, a plant, you know, a farm that does plants, or it's also a place where babies go to be taken care of. So, as we all know, orks breed from mushrooms, so why would they not section off a nice little farm of them to make more boys for the future? Yeah, so anyway, I found these crazy little mushrooms at the dollar store. That's the great thing about dollar stores and stuff like that, is because no matter what season you're in, there's going to be something that's going to be really cool. You know what I mean? Right now we're in springtime, so of course I found these crazy mushrooms, which are awesome, as well as a lot of very vibrant excuse me, mosses and flowers and all kinds of those kinds of things, plastic plants and stuff like that. Whereas around Halloween time, you get, you know, a plethora of different skulls and, you know, chalices and weird, creepy shit that you can be putting in your games. Anyway, took advantage of these mushrooms that I found at a dollar store and decided that I would make this cool little terrain piece, you know? So anyway, I've been rambling on long enough. Let's get to building this actual thing. Alright, so we start with just some foam core. Now this is just a cut off from a past project, and all I'm doing is taking a super sharp knife. Make sure you're always using a real sharp knife when cutting foam core, and basically just cutting out a rough sort of bean shape for it. Now, I got these crazy little mushrooms at the Dollarama, and as you can see, they're just on like a little metal clip. But otherwise, they're basically just styrofoam mushrooms, and the second I saw them, I was like, I can make a terrain piece from this. So, just take the clip off, basically, and then I'm going to sort of plot out where on the board I kind of want them to go. And then, yeah, basically I'm just taking my hot glue gun and gluing them all down, basically trying to spread them out a little bit. And also, because they are all the same formation of 3 mushrooms, I want to make sure that I spin them facing different directions, so at least from, you know, whatever angle you may be looking at it from, it doesn't look like they're all exactly the same facsimile group over and over again. And so I've just decided to put a little tiny fence around this, since if this is going to be like basically a little mushroom farm. I'm just taking some skewer sticks, and I just sort of decided to make them about 1 inch long. I guess because that's basically the height of like a human or what have you. And then, yeah, just measuring them out and cutting the skewer sticks. You can actually just cut them with a pair of wire cutters. They're super easy, way easier to cut than dowels. That's why I'm using them specifically. Yeah, and then so just moving on to popsicle sticks, the usual go-to when it comes to building a fence. Basically, I'm just sort of eyeing them up. I'm not really taking any precise measurements because, again, this is made by orcs, so it's not going to be absolutely perfect, and the more random you make it, actually the more perfect it will be in the sense of being orky themed. So I'm basically just roughly eyeing them up and then just cutting them where I think it'll go, and then just taking a little bit of hot glue, sticking them all together. I mean, it's really that simple, just building a little tiny fence. And then once I've got all the fence pieces in place where I want them to be, I'm just going to take a little bit of crazy glue, and every single joint where I've joined these with hot glue, I'm going to just put a little dab of crazy glue all the way around, because it will soak into the wood. It will make sure that there's a stronger bond between the hot glue and the wood, as well as wood-to-wood contact. Basically because the hot glue itself is great at adhering it very quickly, so I can put it in place without, like, you know, getting all stuck to my fingers and stuff, whereas at the same time, it's not very sturdy, so it will rip off in the future. So now I'm just going to take PVA glue, and I'm going to cover the entire base of this thing with sand, making sure to get, you know, a lot of the areas around the fence, around the bottom of the fence post without getting too much on the fence, and then of course around the mushrooms, once again without getting too much on the mushrooms, and then just sprinkle your sand on top, knock off the excess, and Bob's your uncle. And then basically as it dries, as you can see here, I just wanted to make sure that it didn't warp. Now usually in past terrain tutorials, we've put on spackle or what have you, and so when you lay down your PVA, it's not really going to warp the foam core at that point. But I didn't do that this time, so I felt it needed to be weighted down. As you can see there, I just put some paint pots around the perimeter of the terrain piece just to make sure that the edges didn't curl up as it dried, and made sure it stayed perfectly flat and level. And then, yeah, once all the sand's dry, it's just a nice layer of black rust paint. Now, if you're going to use rust paint, make sure, guys, that you buy a matte finish rust paint. I like rust paint because it pretty much goes on any substance, whether that be glass, metal, plastic, you know, in this case, foam, wood, whatever. But also make sure that you don't buy a gloss, or even, you might be able to get away with a satin, but definitely don't get a gloss or a semi-gloss. Just because you don't want your terrain piece to be shiny, right? I mean, obviously it's not going to have shiny sand and shiny mushrooms and what have you. So make sure you buy a matte finish. Also, because with the gloss, it'll be very hard for your acrylic paints to stick to that surface later. So make sure it's a matte finish. And that way you can just start painting on top. So that's the next step. Let's start painting this bastard. So I'm going to take some dark gray, like I usually have done with all the other orc terrain pieces, and just do a nice big overbrush all over the base of this thing with the gray. Then I'm going to take a bright red, the same bright red I used on all the little mushrooms I put on the other orc terrain pieces, and obviously paint the heads of all these mushrooms in the same red. I'm going to do a couple coats, making sure to get underneath the head of the mushroom as well, making sure that there are no areas of the original styrofoam or even the black primer showing on the mushrooms themselves. So I think it took about 2 coats of red, especially because we're going to be washing on top of this anyway. So you don't need to make them the absolutely perfect red. Then I'm just going to take a little bone color and, of course, paint the stems of the mushrooms, that sort of light beige, like I say, off-white bone color. And then once all the stems are painted that color, I'm also going to go around and put dots all around the mushrooms, much like I did, like I said, on the smaller mushrooms that we've already decorated the other terrain pieces in the Ork Skraptown set. Just to, you know, solidify the entire table together, make sure these terrain pieces all keep the same theme, plus it looks really cool and comical, right? So once the bone's all painted on there, of course I'm going to go around and paint the fence a nice cinnamon brown. This is the base I've used for most of the wood in the other terrain pieces, again, for this orc table. So again, just trying to keep coherency, painting it all cinnamon brown. And then once the fence is fully painted, now I only have the base colors on, right? So I want to make sure that I just take some Agrax Earthshade. Yes, I am using Agrax Earthshade. I know I've told you to use, you know, what I call terrain washes in the past, where you're just taking acrylic paint and watering it down. But since I used Agrax on the mushrooms on the rest of the terrain pieces, I decided to use it also on the mushrooms on this terrain piece. And so I'm hitting the fence and all of the mushrooms, including their stems, even trying to get underneath. As you can see, I'm turning it upside down to try and get the wash underneath, and making sure they get fully covered, yet trying not to get too much onto the base of the terrain piece. And then once the wash is dry, I can just do a solid dry brush, actually a very light dry brush, but over pretty much the entire terrain piece of that bone color once more. I'm actually using unbleached titanium by Liquitex. I'm not sponsored or anything, I'm just telling you. And yeah, you can use any off-white bone color. And like I say, I'm just dry brushing the wood, dry brushing the dirt, and dry brushing the stems of the mushrooms, and then just taking a little bit of it and touching up each one of the dots here and there just to make them pop a little bit more. And then once that's done, I'm just going to go around and actually touch up the red between all of the dots. And what this will do is it'll create a very three-dimensional look to it, since, like I say, it'll only really be washed around the ridges of the head of the mushroom itself and around all the little dots, sort of defining them and really bringing them out of the red field that they're, you know, sitting on. And yeah, I mean, that's how easy it is to paint this thing. We're pretty much done. I'm just going to add a nice little touch by writing some horribly spelled words on the sign here. So I've decided to call this the Nursery, since it can be both, that implies both plants and children, which in this case, I suppose orcs kind of, orc mushrooms are. And then just going around, and I'm basically just going to put down my dark green grass like I have on all the other orc terrain pieces. So throwing down my PVA in all of the spots that I think, you know, aren't quite right, where I hit the dry brush too heavy, or I have little, you know, bubbles and pock marks in the sand or in the paint. And yeah, just make sure to cover all those pieces, where at the same time, just bring the piece to life, finishing it off, and then just add a nice little highlight to my little sign there, just as a nice finishing touch to make those words pop out, and that's the terrain piece. So I hope you all enjoyed that one. That was a super fun one for me. I really like this terrain piece and how it turned out, and I think it's going to add a lot of personality to the table. Yeah, I think it looks absolutely great, and I think this would look awesome on your table too. So go ahead, guys, go to your dollar store. Even if you don't find these exact mushrooms, use the idea, you know what I mean? Go into the craft section of your local Dollarama, or, you know, if you're in the States, I guess you guys have like Dollar Tree. Just walk through and see what you find, because you'd be amazed what you can turn into some really cool, comical, and, you know, really rich in personality style terrain pieces. So anyway, that's that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I try to give you guys these tutorials as being, you know, inexpensive materials, like I say, get from the dollar store, as well as being techniques and things you can do very quickly and easily without much of a learning curve at all. So I hope you guys are appreciating that, and I hope you're building all kinds of awesome terrain pieces yourselves. All that being said, if you do enjoy these videos, please hit the like button just below this screen, or even jump down there and hit subscribe, and that way you'll be able to see all of the other stuff we come out with. Because we don't just do terrain tutorials, guys, we do all kinds of stuff. We have battle reports for multiple gaming systems, we do hobby tutorials, painting tutorials, we do event coverage, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So hit subscribe, it's worth your while, and even hit that little bell so that you know when these videos come out. Also, guys, if you really do like what we do here at Encounter Wargaming, go to the description below and check out our Patreon campaign. For as little as $1 a video, or hell, even $1 a month, you can get a whole bunch of extra perks. You get our normal video content, which you're watching now early, as well as discounts off of warpainter.com, and, you know, the list goes on. There's a whole bunch of other stuff on there for you guys, so please go check it out, at least read through it and give it a thought. Otherwise, if you guys aren't into the like monthly thing or whatever and don't want to support us on a regular basis, you can give us a one-off donation. Not just a donation, just go to our Spreadshirt page below, grab yourself one of these t-shirts, and like I say, it's a one-off purchase, gets you a cool t-shirt and gets us a few dollars to help keep the lights on around here and help make more awesome terrain. So I look forward to hearing about and seeing all of the terrain you guys are building out there, and if yes or no, and this inspired you, and what you did with, or even something you did crazy with stuff you found in your local dollar store. I'd love to hear it. Comment below, drop it on our Facebook page. Hell, you can even email it to us if you want, and I'll post it on our Facebook page. And yeah, I'd love to see what you guys are working on too, and I'm definitely going to be building more terrain for this orc table in the future, so look out for future terrain videos. We're almost there. I think we're almost complete. The table's looking pretty close, but it's still going to need a few more, like I say, big line of sight blocking things, so I'll think of some really awesome sort of centerpieces that I can put on this thing. So yeah, watch out for more of that in the future if you're an orc fan or a terrain fan, or hell, if you're just an Encounter Wargaming fan and love watching our videos, and we'll see you at our next encounter.
Like a monkey in a rocket on his way back home. Okay. Scratching his head.